welcome everyone to today's webinar on achieving the triple win, RGM value generation for manufacturers and retailers and shoppers. And I see we have a diverse crowd here again. If you could quickly type in the chat where you're tuning in from today. We usually see people joining from all around the world. We obviously are at the Buynomics headquarters right now in Cologne, Germany. And yeah, I see Arkansas, Düsseldorf, South Africa, even Poland, Ireland, nice. Cologne, Bielefeld, really cool. Okay, if you would switch to the next slide. Today with me, obviously, our co-founder and managing director, Ingo Reinhardt, as a subject matter expert on triple win today, and joined by our new VP of Revenue, Mario Königsfeld, who will present a tool demo after the theoretical part, where we jump right into really getting our hands dirty with the practice. And yeah, thanks for being at this webinar today, and I leave the stage to you, Mario.
Thanks a lot, Jonathan, and thanks a lot for the introduction. So yeah, maybe before we jump in, couple words on Buynomics, just setting the scene a little bit. What do we do and where we are originating from? So essentially, Buynomics offer a software that ultimately supports you in making better RGM decisions holistically across all of the levers, so pricing, promotions, PPA, and doing all of that from the lens of a shopper. So we're truly a shopper-centric solution, and we're offering a shopper-centric solution. And to achieve that, we're using our AI technology, where we are creating virtual shoppers and a virtual shelf from which they're then actually choosing based on your actual data, sellout data, product data. All of those shoppers have certain preferences, and we provide, also the topic for today's webinar, provide basically the full value chain of having a view at the impact on shopper level, on retailer level, and also, of course, on manufacturer level, including all of the relevant KPIs in terms of market share, revenue, and profitabilities. Now, ultimately, what this approach from a customer-centric perspective brings is basically the holistic approach of optimizing those RGM levers. It's ultimately also a huge decrease of the time to value, so the time to insight. So we see roughly a 70 to 90% basically decrease in the time that is spent on analyzing the market and taking better decisions. And of course, this is ultimately also powered by a high forecasting accuracy of up to 90%. Now, in combination of that, this typically yields 2 to 4%, which is shown and proven with various of our customers, such as Danone, General Mills, Nestlé, Unilever, L'Oreal, and others. And with that, I would hand it over to you, Ingo, for the triple win.
Yeah, thanks, Mario, for the introduction, and also for jumping in at short notice for the demo. Yeah, and welcome everyone to this webinar. I think we're in the middle of the holiday season, so thanks everyone for taking the time and joining our webinar. I think we have something interesting to say, and I'm not sure if we've done triple win before. I think the content we have is fairly new. Really looking forward to the topic, and also to the practical presentation done by Mario and how to make it work in a real life example. Because when you look at it from a more theoretical point of view, it's always very simplified. Topic's already complicated enough, so we simplified as much as makes sense for us. But it's then, I think, very important to then see that the general principles also hold true in a real life example. With that, if you have any questions, I think Jonathan already mentioned in the beginning, please write them into the chat. Really happy to discuss your point of view. We like it when you disagree with what we say, and we're happy to discuss this towards the end. We also want to learn something, and I think we also have a lot to tell. So let's make it an interesting and useful session for all of us. And with this, I think it makes sense to start with a brief definition of the topic. So the topic of today is triple win. What does triple win mean? It, as you can see here, refers to the strategy that benefits the three core parties that we have. I'm not going to read the whole thing. We will share the slides afterwards. So don't have to read through every word here. So, but the core idea is that we have the three core parties: the manufacturers, brands that produce the products, retailers that sell them, and then the shoppers who buy the products and then to consume them. And I think these are the core parties. And of course, I think most of us are in the game because we really want to sell products in a way that all the three parties benefit. And what we want to discuss here today is essentially how we get from more of a zero-sum thinking, where if one party wins, another has to lose, to more of a triple win, and try to understand what are the circumstances and what are the things we can do to make sort of the pie bigger for all of them. I think that's in the end really what everyone's looking for in their RGM practice, because of course it makes the game also much easier if you can speak with your retailers in a way and offer them an opportunity to also benefit from the things you do with your RGM levers. So this is in essence what we want to talk about. And just to add to that, I think been to quite a number of conferences already this year, and we'll have a few more. And the topic of triple win, at least in my perception, we just put together some screenshots of different events, companies who are talking about the topic. I think it's increasing in relevance. I think coming from an era of maybe stronger price increases with high inflation in the past 2-3 years, the field is now shifting towards a broader range of levers. Also talk a lot about PPA, not just about price changes. And we always try to put that in the context of triple win to understand how we can make everyone benefit from it. So, and in this session, I think our idea is that we go through the topic step by step. And I think that the natural starting point is to first look at the relationship between manufacturer and retailer, and then at the relationship between manufacturer, retailer, and the shopper, and try to understand how the things we can do in RGM affect the benefits of these different parties. And to get started, let's start with a quick survey. Jonathan, if you can come back.
Yes, our first poll.
From the dark and run the survey for us.
Exactly. A question that we want to ask you, let me launch the survey. And the question is, how relevant is achieving a triple win for your organization? So if you could answer this from not at all relevant, which is the 1, to 5 very relevant. Okay, a lot of very relevant answers here. We're at 60% participation rate right now. Let's get to 65, and then I close the poll and we can share the results with you. So last chance for you guys to answer this. And then we also, for people joining by phone today, we will read the answers out loud. Okay, I'm closing the poll now and share the results. And here are the results. Mario, Ingo, what are you thinking?
Very one-sided. It's probably the most skewed survey question we had so far. But I think that supports what we said initially. Mario, what do you think?
Yeah, I think one-sided, but not surprising. Also in the discussions that I have on a regular basis with either customers or prospects, that's like the number 1-2 topic that's popping up across the board. So yeah, nice to see that we have a relevant topic here.
Okay, then I leave the stage again to you.
Thanks. Okay. All right, so let's get started. As already announced, the relationship between manufacturer and retailer. So this is probably the most complicated slide we have, but I'll take some time to go through it. And I think it's a topic that that I haven't seen that much, but what I think is important there in the relationship between manufacturer and retailer, there's at the core in terms of the pricing and also the other levers, sort of a prisoner's dilemma. Just a very quick refresher on what the prisoner's dilemma is for those who are not too familiar. The prisoner's dilemma describes a situation where you essentially have two parties and they can have each an optimization challenge. In our case, what's the right price? What's the right margin? And if they optimize themselves, they will reach a suboptimal overall result compared to when they try to get the best overall result. And it's called the prisoner's dilemma because it's, I think in economics, it's first described in a something like the following situation. So you have two criminals, Bonnie and Clyde, they just robbed the bank. The police caught them. Police know they did it, but they can't prove it, right? And then what they do, their strategy is essentially they interrogate them both separately, and both are faced with the same choice. They want them to confess that they robbed the bank. And what they offer is, here's the situation. We have lots of small things on you, speeding tickets, parking tickets, all kinds of stuff. And if you don't confess, you will get 4 years for those in prison. All the things we can prove will get you 4 years in prison. If you don't confess, it gives you 4. And if your colleagues also doesn't confess, if you don't confess, your colleague doesn't confess, we will not be able to charge you for the robbery, but both of you will get 4 years in prison. If you don't confess, your partner confesses, then your partner goes free or just gets 1 year in prison. You will get 10 years because we will put the whole crime on you. And if you do confess, you will get 1 year in prison if your partner does not confess, and then we'll put the crime on the partner. And if you both confess, you will get both 6 years in prison. So for the criminal, for each one of them, it's better to confess to the crime than not to confess to the crime, because in each situation, regardless of what the other does, it's better for each to not confess. And the result will be that both will go to prison for 6 years. Whereas if both do not confess, both will only go to prison for 4 years. So it would be better if they didn't confess, so it could coordinate in the sense, and that would give both of them a better outcome than both confessing to the crime. So this is where the economic idea comes from. But here the case is as follows, and it's very similar in the outcome. So let's first start with the manufacturer point of view. So you have your costs. So we have this graph here. We have sales on the y-axis, price on the x-axis, and we are producing our costs at a cost of €1, as you can see at the upper right corner. And we have here the dashed curve, which gives us a constant price elasticity of -2. And you sell to a retailer. And if you have a price elasticity of -2 in the profit optimum, you will always have margin times price elasticity of -1. So your profit optimal price at which you sell to the retailer will be €2 here at the individual optimization. So if you just look at yourself, you will sell to the retailer at €2. The retailer bought it at €2. Also, the shopper demand curve is essentially also price elasticity of -2. It's the same as this one, just pushed a little bit to the right. So shoppers pay a higher price than the retailers. And if the retailer optimizes, he will also have a margin of 50%, resulting in an overall price of €4 in the end. So if each of the parties optimize themselves, you will go from €1 cost to €2 net price to €4 shelf price. And at this price, with this demand curve, you will have a total revenue here at the shopper level of €2,500 and a profit of 1,875. And important here is the sales volume, of course, is the same. The retailer will only buy what he can sell to the shopper in the end. If they both optimize together on the shopper demand curve, price elasticity -2, they would have a total margin of 50%. they would offer a price of 2 euros, resulting in a total revenue of 5,000 and a profit of 2,500. Overall, that means twice the revenue and about 33% more in profit together. And then, of course, they're still left with the challenge of how to split the profit between the two parties. So this is, of course, an extreme example. You don't have constant price elasticity. The demand curves are not essentially the same, but this is just to highlight the challenge that you have in sort of coordinating. And I think the first task that you have together with your retailer is making sure when you have the manufacturer profit, retailer profit, the same for revenue, is that you find a way to get sort of to the efficient boundary where you then only have the challenge of how do you split the profit between the retailer and the manufacturer. So this is, I think, the first challenge. Of course, in reality, the difference between the 2 points is not as extreme as in this case. So you're most likely not 30% of the optimum here, but in tendency, in principle, this problem exists. And of course, the problem, one of the key solutions for the prisoner's dilemma are repeated games. And this is essentially what we have, because we work with the same manufacturers and retailers year over year. Then it's much easier to coordinate and make sure to get to the right optimum here in this case. So this, I would say, is the first challenge, to find the efficient frontier, and then to, depending on the power balance between the parties, find the right spot or the right split of the benefits. There are, of course, a number of challenges. I think the most relevant, happy to discuss if you see other ones, are, of course, that it's for both parties don't see the whole cake here. If we think in these pie charts, the retailer, of course, doesn't know the costs of the manufacturer, and therefore doesn't fully know what the revenue split is. The manufacturer doesn't know the retailer's terms with everyone else. And I think there are also a number of other strategic challenges that are typically important. For example, a retailer might have different needs from different categories. So some categories where he just wants to maximize revenue to get people in the store, other categories the retailer needs to be profitable. So there might be some strategic objectives that, of course, complicate the challenge, but essentially this is the core challenge that governs the relationship between retailer and manufacturer. So if this is solved, and I think for this relationship, I think there are two things that are important. One is, of course, understanding the nature of this prisoner's dilemma and how both parties can improve. And the second one is, and that's more what Mario will talk about in the example, is having the techniques, the analytics to actually find the optimum and understand how a price change, for example, affects both parties. Let's go to the next topic. So let's say we understood the relationship between manufacturer and retailer, and now we want to understand sort of their joint relationship with the shopper. And this is essentially governed by this second graph here, where again, we have sales on the y-axis, we have the price on the x-axis, and here we have a number of shoppers, and they are sorted by their willingness to pay. So this first one to the very left is not willing to pay a lot for the product, and the one furthest to the right has the highest willingness to pay. Again, the profit of manufacturer and retailer is indicated by this square here, pretty much the same as in the previous graph, computed price minus cost times sales. And the shopper benefit, and I think the most straightforward way to assess the shopper benefit here is by essentially measuring the size of this triangle here. So we have this one furthest to the right with a very high willingness to pay, has a willingness to pay here and pays this price. So has a lot of shopper benefit here. The second one, little less, and so on. And this gives us this triangle here. And of course, we already see or know from our day-to-day work and the previous slide, this box is maximized where price elasticity times margins minus 1. We can just compute. There's an optimum in the middle. And of course, the shopper benefit in this case here always increases as the price goes down. Right? These are the dynamics of the two shapes here. And if we say run through different price points, we get essentially these three curves that are of interest to us. This one here that comes way from the top is the shopper benefit. And it, of course, always decreases with an increase in price. If we look at this triangle, if we move the price to the right, this triangle here gets smaller. And the other next interesting curve is the manufacturer retailer profit, which is the smallest curve down here. And then we have this curve here, the green one, which is essentially the sum of these two others. And we see, and this is important, that the price that maximizes, and this is generally the case, that maximizes the joint benefit of manufacturer and retailer is the highest price, and then a little less somewhere between cost and the profit maximum is typically the price that maximizes the joint benefit of retailer, manufacturer, and shopper. So we already see here, if we just look at a single product, it's not so easy to increase the shopper benefit by increasing prices. Shopper benefit always only increases with sort of the price decrease here. And most of the time, unless we're way overpriced, we will not be in a position where we can, with a price change, both improve the shopper benefit and the retailer and manufacturer benefit. So what can we do? Looking again at the sort of demand curve, this is the demand curve for the shopper. And we already looked at, particularly when we have a single product with price, we can only make the shopper happier with price decreases. But this is most of the case not the best thing for us as the manufacturer retailer side. So for us, the other option to improve the benefit for the shopper is really to change this curve here, right? To move up the demand curve. And this can be done by different things. It can be done by improving the portfolio, changing product sizes, adding products, removing products, or introducing new products that give a lot of value to the customer. So this is, I think, the key relationship or the key way to improve the shopper benefit is in some cases where we're off the optimum with price changes, but much more so with product portfolio changes that really generally add value to the shopper, for the shopper. Just a summary, I think we can really skip this where we just summarized the different interests of the different parties. And with that, I would hand over to Mario and then come back to the summary. Oh, again, sorry, again, missed the survey. Jonathan?
Yes, we have a second survey actually. And the question is, how well is your organization managing the triple win right now, or as of now? We saw in the first poll that it's highly relevant to most of you. And now the question is, okay, how advanced is your organization already in it? I see a lot of 3s, not a single 5 yet. 1. Okay, we had 60% participation. Let's wait another 5 seconds and then I can share the results with you. Okay. 1, 2, 3. I'm ending the poll and sharing the results. And again, the question, Ingo, Mario.
Yeah, much more normal. And I hand over to Mario.
I think also that is sort of expected, but why is it expected? Like, it's just very difficult, right? With the width of the portfolio, with the different levers that you have on pricing, promotions, and so on, and then achieving a win-win-win strategy or win-win-win scenario for shoppers, retailers, and yourself. It's just very difficult in a complex scenario, complex world. So yeah, typically that's what we also hear from our customers. and happy to dive a little bit more into our solution and show you how this can be made possible. I think that's actually quite a nice transition.
Perfect.
Okay.
Let me share. Ingo, Jonathan, can you see my screen?
Yep.
Perfect. All right. So let's start with the complexity of the market that we see today, and this is essentially what we can capture in our solution, in our software, and it really shows you how difficult it is to ultimately achieve the triple win and how easy it can be made with advanced software solutions. So just from a starting point, we have a relatively broad portfolio here, different competitors, different own brands, and of course, a level deeper into that, you have all of the individual weeks that those products are being offered. And of course, they're also offered across different channels, different retailers, adding to the entire complexity. Now, of course, the main questions are, what is the right price? What is the right portfolio structure? What is the right promotional offering that you put in place? And you would like to see the impact on all of the KPIs, including units being sold, market share, the revenue of the retailer, and also, of course, the revenue of the manufacturer. And combining all those levers and those KPIs in one view and in one single source of truth as an analysis is really one of the core strengths of Buynomics. And what I would like to show you today is basically an example that we've set up. So we are facing different scenarios here. So we have adapted price 3 times, and 1 time we added an additional product. And we will go through the different layers of retailer, manufacturer, and of course also end shopper. And what we're going to take a look at is how to achieve ultimately those triple win strategies, those triple win price, promotion, product changes. And I think what really helps as a very first step is gaining transparency of the status quo. So coming from this price change in the first case and looking at a retailer here, we see that all 4 different scenarios that we have set up basically achieve a winning strategy for the retailer. So 1 win basically ticked off. Now the question is, of course, how do these scenarios actually play out for manufacturer and shopper? And this is basically what we can then easily display via different views, different sort of ways on how to look at it. And if we dive a little bit deeper, we see, oh, actually the exact same scenarios that were just playing out well for the revenue of the retailer, they're not that good anymore when we're looking at the manufacturer, right? So we can basically cross off the first scenario here where we adapted only prices, and we are left with 2 scenarios that perform well on price and 1 that's performing very well in terms of product adjustment. Now, the most difficult part comes when looking at shoppers, and shoppers typically measured in terms of volume. So we have here an example, I think, of iced tea in the market. And now, how would you proxy the success for shoppers, and the win for shoppers is ultimately trying to assess how many people are actually purchasing, right? So the assumption is the more people, the more volume is ultimately consumed, the more successful that implementation has also been for shoppers. And we see again that from the 4 initial scenarios, we can now cross out the first 2 that are not performing well enough to be considered as a true triple win strategy. Now, let's not focus on the ones that are not performing well, but let's rather focus on the ones that are performing well. Specifically, the price changes here and the product change that we implemented for the last one. And what I want to show you is really in detail how this can look like. And what we did for that was basically running our decision guide that goes through all of those different possible scenarios and ultimately really optimizes for certain KPIs here, the revenue of retailer, manufacturer, and of course also the total volume. And what you can see is that this is really a differentiated change that is necessary to achieve that. So we're from those own products that we have here, I think 6 in total, we're going very much differentiated in terms of price changes across all of those individual products. So we're decreasing a couple of those, but we're also increasing one product here. And of course, this also leads to very much differentiated changes in terms of volume that is being sold. So here in terms of effect on units, in terms of the effect on revenues, and of course also in terms of the effect on revenues of the retailer. So ultimately what you can see is that typically there is not one straightforward change, for example, like a 3, 5, or 7% price change that yields this triple win, but it's rather a very differentiated strategy that you need to apply to really achieve revenue growth for both manufacturer and retailer, and also volume/unit growth, ultimately more shoppers purchasing for the market itself. Now, this is basically one part, and the other part can be a slightly different strategy, right? So not only adjusting prices, but simply extending the portfolio and introducing a new product can also help achieving those triple win strategies. So typically the questions that we're also facing from our customers, our clients on portfolios is 3 different cases. So either delisting products and like reducing long tail with the goal of increasing profitability, or changing features of existing products. So for example, changing a certain pack size, changing a certain volume, and testing out a new format in the market, or adding new products to the portfolio and extending the range and the potential occasions that people are purchasing for. And this is exactly what we see here. So we introduced this new 8-pack of 1.15 liter bottles, and we can directly assess the effect on all of our own products. So we can, for example, see how negatively the 6-pack is affected logically by this addition, but we also see how much we're gaining from all of our competitors here, which ultimately leads then to more products being sold of our own products, and also the total category growth, which is basically the ultimate win on a shopper level. Now, in terms of revenue for the manufacturer and also for the retailer, again, there we have a differentiated view on the individual products. So we can see, again, the cannibalization effect on our own portfolio, basically shifting volume into this new 8-pack, but ultimately, bottom line, achieving here also a win for the manufacturer as well for the retailer, which then makes a very good story to trade, right? So if you're, as a manufacturer, then approaching the retailer and showing him the results of this exercise, the results of this forecasting, and undermining your value proposition and your story to trade with those results is very powerful in negotiations. Ingo, do you have any questions, any comments?
No, all good here. And I think what's really interesting here is that we have this really differentiated view, right? So we're computing this here by brand, by individual SKUs over time. So can have really the microstructure in here. I think one thing we didn't talk about, but it's also one of the drivers that affects all 3 parties is, for example, distribution. Typically distribution and improvement in distribution benefits all 3 parties. For shoppers, if the products they like are more available, and the other ones because they have more opportunities to sell them. So there are some micro factors that play a role. And here, for example, we can really look at the effects of increasing distribution also on all 3 parties.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, then handing it back over to you and the presentation.
Okay, before we go to the questions, just very quickly back on this slide that we sort of skipped before the presentation. What we did here is essentially we look at the 3 parties: manufacturer, retailer, shopper, and the key interests. Again, happy think those, from our point of view, those are the most relevant drivers: market share, revenue, profit, value for money, and then what's important for the different parties. And we see here already manufacturer and retailer, just from the look of the matrix, they're much more aligned than either one is with the shopper in how they look at the world. So they both like more market share, they both like more revenue, more profit. They of course have here this core challenge, the power balance, where to some extent the increase of one once you're at the efficient boundary is a decrease for the other. So you have this power structure here. And then you have the shopper, I think, is mostly interested in value for money, but for us that's not so easy to measure. And the way Mario did it in the demo, and I think most of us are looking at, again, happy to discuss, looking at is that we take things like market share, sales units sold, and revenue sort of as a proxy for the value for money from the shopper point of view, with the understanding that if shoppers buy more of our products, then they like it more and they get more benefit out of it. And if you think back at the core graph that we had in the beginning about the relationship between shoppers, retailers, and manufacturers, it was also that in cases where shoppers benefited, in those cases where they bought more because the product was more valuable or the price was lower for them. So this is just as a summary of the ideas, highlighting, I think here is core the power relationship between retailers and manufacturers, as well as the fact that manufacturers and retailers are very similar in how they look at and how they benefit from the case. And then the core challenge with the shopper here, most interested value for money, which is difficult to measure. Also important, always a reminder in RGM that the shopper doesn't care about our profits, and that we use market share and revenue as proxy for a value for money. If we summarize what I think are key takeaways here is from the initial slide, we saw that it's really difficult in a case where particularly in a case with just a single product, to get a triple win just with price changes, because shoppers always lose if the price increases. So there are very few cases, particularly when we're too expensive, where we can have a triple win, but in most cases, this won't be the case. There are, however, and that's, I think, a good thing, if we have a full portfolio where it's much more difficult to be in the sort of efficient frontier, there will always be cases where we are suboptimal in our pricing and we can improve, and then we can look at this improvement and say, okay, how do we want to use that improvement and split it between the parties, what share. And that was also what Mario showed in the example. We can use some of the improvement for our own profit, net revenue for the retailer, as well as for the shopper. I think the best way, if we can find those opportunities, are always portfolio improvements, where we add new products or we add new product sizes or change product sizes, and with this increase the total value to the shopper, indicated in the graph by an increase in the demand curve. That was the example that we show. And what we didn't show, but where there's also an opportunity, is of course with improving the way we work with promotions, where we can through price differentiation. I think we did this in a past webinar. I think we'll dig that up again and to discuss this in one of the next webinars. But with promotions, there are also opportunities to support a triple win, but those cases we haven't discussed here today. So that was my summary. Shall we go to the questions?
Yes, let's go to the Q&A section. Thanks, Ingo. Thanks, Mario. I think it was very, very interesting, the past 40 minutes. We have 2 questions, as I can see here. And the first question is, just wondering, retailers usually use the key brand's product to lure in certain consumers that purchase a very interesting basket. So to convince them on these is no-go, as we don't see full impact realized by the retailer. What could be your comment on this?
Yeah, I think that was the example that that I mentioned before, one of the things that complicate the relationship are these more strategic topics. So where retailers are not optimizing, just simply optimizing the specific category, but use the category for strategic reasons. For example, getting shoppers into their store. This always complicates the situation. I think we would have to look at this specifically in the specific case that's described. Happy to follow up on this, but I don't think we'll be able to answer this here. But this is really the strategic ingredient that complicates the optimization here.
Okay, thanks, Ingo.
Maybe just to add on to that. So I think 100% correct. It's like a very strategic question, strategic decision. On top of that, what helps with the decision making is, of course, having transparency of the entirety of the market, right? So if you have the transparency of all products across time for different retailers, channels, that really helps also in this negotiation. And you can pinpoint basically which products are sort of, let's say, leaders for traffic in the stores, and which are more of fillers, and can differentiate, of course, also your pricing, promotions, and offering according to that.
Agree. Thanks, Mario. And then a last question from Adrian. If you go back to slide 4, I think it was, is the chart meant to show blue manufacturer profit as bigger as the total orange area? I think it was slide 4, Ingo, if we could show this. Slide 5, actually, the prisoner's dilemma.
Yeah. What's the question?
Blue plus manufacturer profit, is this bigger than the total orange area?
Yeah, I was hoping to get away with that. So the calculation here is correct, but the graph is not correct. The thing is that these curves, they're tilted more, but I couldn't do it. It's my sort of like visual inability that made this look weird. But the calculation is right. The graph can be improved here.
Yeah, but you see that the attendees in this webinar, they have a keen eye for these details.
Yeah, very very impressive. Yeah, I was hoping to get away with that.
Okay, I think these were all the questions right now, and now we can come to a very, very interesting topic, which is the next webinar that we have actually planned. And we have another expert webinar with a guest speaker planned at the end of this month of August, at August 30th, on the topic of change management and RGM excellence. And our guest will be Kai-Tak Tam from Orkla. And we are very excited to talk with him about this topic. I think he has presented a similar topic on some of the great events we were already this year. So it's nice to have him in this webinar. And let me quickly share the link with you guys. You're the first ones to get it, can register for it into the chat right now. Here's the link. You can register. So you already have it in your calendar in 3 weeks. 3 to 4 weeks, 4 weeks. Yeah, and basically that's all. I hope you enjoyed this webinar. And thank you very much, Ingo and Mario, for presenting today. It was a pleasure as always. And we're looking forward to the next great sessions that we're having.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.